All right, so intervals. I mentioned this in the tuning module, and I told you that I would explain it, so here I am to do that. Intervals are one of the most important things to know as a guitar player, as a musician, as a singer. Anybody who plays music should know the intervals. And the intervals, what is an interval? An interval is the distance between two things. So in music, we utilize that to tell us the distance between two things, typically two notes. Right? So this is the A string, and you should remember that from the tuning module. I'm going to use the A string to chart my course around the neck. And once I've done that, I'm going to show you how to use the rest of the notes of the alphabet in alphabetical order to find your way around the rest of the neck. So this is A. Establish that. And B is the next note in the alphabet, obviously. B is a whole step away from A. Now, what does that mean? A whole step is stepping over something, stepping over another note. A half step is stepping directly to the next note. So if you can imagine when you run up a flight of stairs, do you run up on every single step? Some people do. That's half steps if you use every step in the staircase. If you skip a step, like people with longer legs do, most kids, and you don't go there, I'm skipping this step and this step. Imagine a staircase that you're running up. If you're skipping a step, that is a whole step because you skipped a step. You skipped the half step and went a whole step. So that's what it means when something is a whole step away. That interval is very important, obviously, because if you did not know that B was a whole step from A, it could be anywhere. You could think it's here. You could think it's here. It's not. It's right here. And it always will be, as long as you're in standard tuning. So using this A to establish your foundation and build your key to this sort of uncharted map, we know that B is a whole step away. But C is a half step away. So instead of going up the staircase and skipping a step, we're going to go to the very next step. B and C are a half step apart, and they always will be. If you look at any piano keyboard and you count from any note that you know, let's say you know where G is, or A, G, A, B, or A, B. What you'll find after B is the C note. There is no black key there separating B and C, which means they're right next to each other or a half step apart. They're not going to put a black key there anytime soon, and because the piano keyboard is the same as every other instrument. If B and C don't have a black key between them on the piano, then they don't have a fret between them on the guitar. So that's an absolute. B and C will always be a half step apart. First half. So here I am at C. How did I find it? The alphabet. A to B is a whole step. B to C, is it a half step or a whole step? I don't remember. What I remember is that B and C are a half step apart. So I asked myself, I'm going to go from A to B. Is that B and C? No, it's A and B. So it's a whole step. I'm going to go from B to C. Is that B and C? Yes, it's B and C. So I'm going to go a half step. That's the entire formula. So at C, to get to D, I'm going to ask myself the same question. I'm going to go from C to D. Is it B and C? No. So it's a whole step. Skipping over what's in between them, C sharp, which on a piano keyboard you'll see very clearly. After C, there is a black key. Something in between C and D, and it's that note. So we take that whole step. C, D, E. If you use your ear and connect it to your gut, like I was talking about in the tuning module, you'll hear two whole steps. Sounds like it has space in it, and you can really hear it when you take the space out. So here's C, D, and E flat, not going all the way to E. Right? Open and airy, closed and dark. Right? So those whole steps have a quality to them. They're kind of relaxing as opposed to these half steps. And you should recognize that sound, because as you learn intervals, especially on the guitar, you don't just learn them on one string. You learn them across the neck or down the neck, whichever way you prefer. And that means that you have to go from C to D a whole step. It's not B and C. And from D to E down to the next string. So keeping track of the fact that this distance is a whole step from this string on this fret to that string on that fret is difficult, especially when you're starting out. So really using your ear here is going to be really helpful. If you go like that, you'll know that you're not playing two whole steps. So we've gone C, D, E. E and F are the other two notes that are a half step apart. And if you look on any piano keyboard, find middle C, C, C sharp, D, D, D sharp, E. There are notes in between C, D, and E, but there is no black key in between E and F, which means that they are right next to each other. They always will be. They're not going to put a black key on the piano, and they're not going to change all sheet music in the world and rebuild every instrument. So this is an absolute that you can depend on. E and F will always be a half step apart. B and C and E and F. So you really only have to remember those two, B and C and E and F, because all the rest of the intervals are a whole step in what I'm showing you right now, the major scale. Now you may not know this, but you know this. The major scale is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You've known that your whole life. It's the most natural thing, kind of ingrained into us, right? Especially if you know the song Do, Re, Mi. So Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do is in alphabetical order. C, D, E. I'm going from E to F. Is it E and F or B and C? Yeah, it's E and F. So I'm going to go a half step. Do, re, mi, fa. F is fa. That's easy to remember. F to G. How far do I go to get to G? What is the interval from F to G? Well, it's not E and F, and it's not B and C, so it must be a whole step. And of course it is, because F sharp is between them. So far we have Do, re, mi, fa, sol. So from here to here is our next whole step, and that's going from C, D, E, F, G to A. A whole step across strings. So C, D, E, F, G, A. G to A is a whole step because it's not E and F and it's not B and C. You can just keep asking yourself that question and you'll always have the answer. So G to A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 notes we have so far. Last two, A to B. We talked about this in tuning. A to B is not B and C and not E and F. So it's a whole step. And now we're back at B. So we're about to play C, which is what we started on. B and C. I'm going to go from B to C. Is it B and C or E and F? Yes, it's B and C. So it's a half step. And the end result is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. That will create a major scale anywhere on the neck. I can't impress upon you enough how important it is that you know that one scale. So please learn it, use it to come to understand your intervals, and what it will allow you to do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the octave, 8 notes. What is the interval from the 1, or the first note, to the third? What's that distance? 2 whole steps, or a major third. What's the distance between C and G, or the 1, the first note, and the 5th note? Five. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or a whole, a half, and a whole. Whole step, 2 whole steps, 2 and a half, 3 and a half, and you get a perfect 5th. So these intervals go on up the neck or up the keyboard to 6ths, flat 7ths, 7ths, 8. Know the distance between this string, this note on this string, and this note on this string. That is a 6th. So that when you hear it elsewhere, you can play it. Because if you can hear it, you can play it. If you can't hear it in your head, and you can't hear it when someone else is playing it, how are you supposed to replicate it here? I'm not going to go into that though. I just want you to remember that the notes in the musical scale are in alphabetical order, and they are very specific distances from one another. Always. It's an absolute, so you learn it once, you can rely on that for the rest of your musical life. Is it E and F, or is it B and C? You just have to ask yourself that question.